Please welcome Tony Burnam.
Thank you very much. It has been an honor to be part of this jury. It is absolutely exhilarating to be associated with this award and to be in the presence of a range of people, of journalists, of supporters of journalism who I think really are committed to the kind of progressive ideals that this prize embodies. Why does serious journalism in this racy, 24/7, high-voltage, crazy world really matter? We live in what often seems to be a cynical, celebrity-obsessed 21st century. So what real impact do today's news stories or special series or broadcast reports and documentaries really have on the quality of life for you, for me, and most importantly, for those around us whom we regard as truly precious or vulnerable? Well, on the basis of the marvelous entries we, the judges, were privileged to examine for the Canadian Hillman Prize, the answers are very clear. High-quality journalism still does matter, and it is thriving in this country. High-quality journalism is being done at a time when resources are stretched, when the excuses to do nothing are plentiful, and when government these days, at all levels, self-serving to the core, seem intensely determined to shut the public out. And this high-quality journalism is having a dramatic impact on the quality of all of our lives. For this, we should be thankful. This year, there have been so many smart, passionate, gutsy projects that have grabbed public attention and changed public policy here in Canada. It is clear that across this country, the public has been well served. For me, and I know for Bonnie and Fiona as well, this has been a very difficult choice. But in the end, there is only one first-place winner, and I am delighted to announce it. The 2014 Canadian Hillman Prize is awarded to Kleiss from the Edmonton Journal and Darcy Henton from the Calgary Herald for their relentless investigation into the deaths of children while in provincial foster care. This was a remarkable series, 6 parts, titled Fatal Care. It turned a spotlight on a very dark room where the most vulnerable in Alberta were left on their own. It revealed that in the last 14 years, 145 children, most of them Aboriginal, have died while in provincial care, almost 3 times the number that had been publicly reported. The Fatal Care series kicked open a door that had until then been locked. In dramatic, personal detail, it showed what was inside. Too many people in power, feeling that it better serve their interests to keep this information secret with little regard to the interests of the victims. This was not a series that was easy to accomplish. It started with a simple question asked by Kleiss. How many children have died in provincial care? For the reporters, it required a 4-year battle to gain access to the death records. It then involved a painstaking 6-month investigation by both the Edmonton Journal and the Calgary Herald. They discovered that children who had been placed in foster care had suffocated in bed or succumbed to disease. The Alberta government had underreported their numbers. 1/3 of the children who died in care were babies. Who did we encounter in this series? We read about a young boy who made a suicide pact with his mother and then hanged himself in a group home. We read about a 15-year-old teenage girl described as strikingly beautiful who was murdered and dumped in a ditch. As the series described it, she died anonymously, a young life lost under the shroud of secrecy with scarcely anyone noticing. And we read about a young mother whose baby was taken from her, but after 6 days in provincial care, the baby died. I too died that day, said the baby's mother. The series placed special focus on the fate of young Aboriginal children in provincial foster care in Alberta. Only 9% of Alberta children are Aboriginal, according to the series, but they account for nearly 80% of children who have died in foster care in Alberta since 1999. Until this series appeared, these were young lives and tragic deaths that few people in Alberta or anywhere else took notice of. But the series helped change that. Since it was published, Alberta's policy on death records was changed to open it up to public scrutiny. The topic dominated discussion at the Alberta legislature, and during an emergency debate, the provincial government announced a comprehensive roundtable on child welfare reform. As Karen Kleiss from the Edmonton Journal and Darcy Henton from the Calgary Herald know full well, the door they have pushed open is only the beginning. But a spotlight is now shining in a room that was, until recently, completely dark. Thanks to their rigorous journalism, we are learning the names and stories of people, many very, very young, who until now lived and died anonymously, but no more. We thank Karen and Darcy and their newspapers for their work, and we honor them with the 2014 Canadian Hillman Prize. As we invite Karen and Darcy to come up here, I am pleased to recognize two supportive editors who are with us in the audience, Margot Goodhand, editor of the Edmonton Journal, and Stephanie Coombs, managing editor of the Edmonton Journal. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's incredible. This is incredible. I'm very nervous, so bear with me. I've written down some things that I'd like to say. I often feel that practicing journalism is the greatest privilege of my life. And every day I'm grateful that I get to be a reporter and for a great newspaper. I've never felt more privileged and more grateful than I did when I was working on the Fatal Care series. It's an incredible honor to stand up here and receive an award for the work that we did, especially a Hillman. I cannot imagine a greater honor than for someone to say that the work that you've done has made a real difference in the lives of other people. Thank you to the Sidney Hillman Foundation and to the judges and for that kind introduction. Thank you. It means more to me and to Darcy than you can imagine. But anybody who's ever worked on a big investigative project like this knows that the journalists who claim the bylines can never ever take credit for all of the work. This series in particular was the result of incredible work by two of Canada's greatest newsrooms and many in our community besides. I vividly remember the day that I walked into Alan Mayer's office. He was then the editor-in-chief. It was 2009. And I said I wanted to put in an access to information request for all the child welfare death records going back a decade. It was a massive request. The only real argument I had was that it was the right thing to do because these kids were in Alberta nameless, faceless, and nobody was even counting them. I told him that it would take years, that there would be a legal battle with the government, that there would be huge lawyers' bills, and we had no idea what we'd get at the end of it all. What editor in their right mind would say yes to a request like that? Well, he did, and he said the paper was totally behind me and they'd pay all the bills, and then he retired. Mercifully, all of the editors and all of the editors who followed were as passionate about this story. So after the first few years of legal wrangling and waiting, I made my way into Stephanie's office. She's here tonight, and I wanted to make a pitch for the story, and I do believe there was a PowerPoint involved. And we'll just skip over that part. Suffice to say that Stephanie and our new editor-in-chief at the time, Lucinda Chodan, also got behind the project. I do believe that was when they started writing lawyers' checks. And of course, by the time we got to the point where we actually had the records in hand and it was time to write, we had a new editor-in-chief, Margot Goodhand, who's here tonight, and she backed the project fully. And I have to say, and all the journalists in the room know this, it is a rare thing indeed to be given 6 months to work on a project in this day and age with the full support of your editors and no rushing, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Thank you. They seconded both of us for 6 months. It's no small thing for two of Alberta's legislature reporters to be seconded on a project. Our colleagues in the newsroom worked, the legislature beat. They picked up our weekends and our newsroom and our weekend night shifts, and they never complained, and it felt like family. There were those random acts of incredible journalistic kindness, like our court reporter Ryan Cormier, with whom I've been in open competition since we both started at the paper 10 years ago. He called and said he'd found a lawsuit at the courthouse that might help, and that lawsuit contained the story that in your programs you'll see turned into the haunting front page photo that ran on the first day of our series. And that photo was taken by a photographer who, and I'm not joking here, we have bad winters in Alberta, literally risked his life on highways and traipsed through knee-deep snow to get the shot. And Ryan Jackson, who sat with me in stunned silence as we drove home after a family had shared the raw and uncut version of their story, shuddering and weeping on camera. We were both speechless. And those are just a few examples, obviously. There are many more. Let's not forget the bureaucrats who spent months of their lives redacting thousands of pages of horrific death records that were eventually released to us. And the civil servant who took a deep breath, looked me in the eye, and decided to trust me, and then slammed the government on the record about their child death review system, which gave us the meat we needed for our big story on the system. I'm almost finished here. I spent weeks searching for the family of a baby who died in foster care after her bassinet collapsed. I called every family by that last name in the country, even the guy who made the crosses for the graveyard on the reserve, and I couldn't find them. And in the end, a brave social worker risked her job to leak me the mother's first name. And when I found the baby's mother, she told her story with such incomprehensible courage, admitting even that she drank a six-pack on the day that her daughter was born and taken from her. Her shame was overwhelming, and yet she endured it so that no other child would ever die in a collapsed bassinet again. Darcy was trapped in a very small room with me for several months, bless his heart. He endured me at my absolute worst, kept the candy dish full and the coffee flowing, so thank you, Darcy. And Stephanie Coombs, who is here today, was our project editor. I have never in my life had the privilege of working with an editor who is so progressive, so gutsy, and so all-around fierce as Stephanie Coombs. So there are no words to express my gratitude, truly. And I have to say, my two wonderful parents are here. They raised me in a small town outside Toronto, and they still live here. And I work in Edmonton, obviously, so they don't often get to see how much hell I raise at work. So it's a real treat for me to have them here tonight. My parents are by far the greatest influence in my life, and I owe them everything. So thank you.
And believe me, she does raise hell. When she gets an email from the government announcing charges against an oil company at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, you can hear her all the way through the legislature building. I don't have a long speech. I just wanted to acknowledge the Hillman Foundation. As a fellow countryman of Sidney Hillman, my dad was born in Lithuania, so I feel I share kinship there. But I really wanted to acknowledge the other entries and these incredible, awesome stories that we've seen here tonight. It's an amazing, amazing tribute to journalism, and it shows that journalism that's really important still gets the attention it deserves, even in these times of severe fiscal restraint. I'm so glad to see that. It's very encouraging for us who sometimes have felt that our career was on the downward path. So I don't really have much else to say except when we were doing this project together, Karen kept photos of all the children that we tracked down. She pinned them to the wall of our office as a reminder of what we were doing and why we were doing it. And we wanted to publish those pictures, but we never could because of the law. In Alberta, there's a publication ban on the names of children who die in care. And it's as if those children have been erased from the face of the earth. But the government has said they're going to change that law, and that for us is our real prize here tonight. Thank you very much.